Imagine a country richer than France, like richer than Germany, richer than Canada.
Yeah, right up there in the top 10.
Exactly. You are sitting comfortably in the top 10 richest nations on Earth. The streets are literally paved with wealth.
Endless fertile lands.
Just boundless future. I mean, your capital city is building subway systems before most of Europe.
It was a golden era.
But then imagine that same country plummeting to 37th place.
It is staggering.
No massive global war on its soil. No alien invasion. Just a self-inflicted wound. A total structural collapse.
Well, it is the ultimate historical paradox, you know?
Right.
You are looking at a superpower that essentially committed institutional suicide in broad daylight.
And the public watched it happen.
Not just watched. I mean, in many ways, they cheered for it.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a truly fascinating working paper.
From the National Bureau of Economic Research, yeah.
Right, published in 2009 by Alston and Andrés A. Gallo.
It's called Electoral Fraud: The Rise of Perón and Demise of Checks and Balances in Argentina.
And our mission today is very specific. We are going to deconstruct the exact moment a prosperous nation broke its own foundation.
We will see exactly how short-term political panic destroyed a century of prosperity.
But before we jump into the data, we really need to set a baseline here.
Absolutely. This text covers intense political polarization.
Very intense.
You've got wealthy conservative landowners on one side and populist labor unions on the other.
Right, and we are not taking sides here.
No, not at all. Our approach is completely neutral. We are simply unpacking the historical data from the source.
We just want to see how the system itself broke down, mechanics over modern judgments.
Exactly. We are looking at the math of failure.
And, why should you care about a South American political crisis from 90 years ago?
Because the exact trap they fell into is the exact same trap modern democracies face today.
Every time there is a crisis, the temptation to bypass the rules appears.
Yeah, and you've been lied to about economic collapse.
Wait, lied to how?
Well, bad policies do not destroy nations overnight. Tearing up the rule of law does.
That is a total face-slapping truth right there.
It really is. Let's look at the raw number.
Between 1900 and 1948, Argentina spent 15 years in the top 10 globally.
They were an economic titan, the place European immigrants dreamed of.
But by the year 2000, they had plummeted to 37th.
And this decline defies all standard logic. I mean, they didn't just forget how to farm.
Right, they didn't lose their ports.
No. The invisible foundation, the rule of law, was intentionally dismantled in the 1930s.
It is like owning a Ferrari, but you decide to rip out the brake lines because you are in a hurry.
That is a perfect analogy.
You might go fast for a mile, but the crash is mathematically inevitable. The trust is gone.
Exactly. The elites disabled the brakes and thought the public wouldn't notice.
But how do we prove this statistically? Like, how do we know it wasn't just bad luck in the markets?
We look at a control group, the historical answerer.
Right, the identical clones.
Yeah, what happens when you put 3 identical economic clones in a race and only one trips over its own feet?
You get undeniable proof.
The study compares Argentina directly to Australia and Canada.
Because back then, they were basically identical twins.
Exactly. All 3 had massive, untapped natural resources. All 3 built their economies on exports.
And they all relied on foreign capital to build railways.
They had the exact same starting hand in the global poker game.
But look at the trajectories. Australia stayed in the top 10 from 1890 to 1980.
Canada joined in 1910 and basically never left.
While Argentina just fell off a cliff.
Scholars prove Argentina went down this path because elites engaged in rational speculation.
Okay, wait, stop there. Rational speculation. That sounds incredibly academic. What does that mean?
It means calculating your odds of survival during a panic. Yeah. The Argentine elites faced a massive crisis. They looked at the board and rationally calculated that staying in power right now was more important than the rules.
So they chose short-term political survival over long-term stability.
They quite literally traded their grandchildren's wealth to keep their own offices.
So they didn't just stumble into this. They knew bypassing the rules was dangerous.
But the immediate fear just overrode their logic.
That is terrifying. Because it is so human.
The brutal logic of survival always feels justified in the moment.
They thought they were saving the country, but they guaranteed a century of chaos.
To really understand how they broke it, we have to look at how beautifully it was built.
A piece of paper made Argentina rich, But the people didn't actually believe in it.
Right. In 1862, they established a federalist system modeled heavily on the U.S. Constitution.
Executive, Senate, deputies, independent judiciary. A textbook setup.
And it fiercely protected property rights, which is the magic ingredient for a developing nation.
Because investors knew their money was safe.
Exactly. Massive British capital flooded the Pampas, the fertile agricultural region.
So the constitutional copy-paste worked.
Well, de jure, yes. By law, it worked. But de facto, in reality, it was fragile. It was missing the crucial element, a deep societal belief in the system.
You can copy a constitution, but you cannot copy a culture of trusting the rules.
Precisely. The institutions were strong, but the cultural buy-in was incredibly weak.
If the public doesn't believe the referee is impartial, the rule book means nothing.
And that fragile trust was about to face a massive stress test, giving power to the people.
Giving people the vote was supposed to save the country. Instead, it lit a time bomb.
Let's look at 1912. The conservatives passed the Sáenz-Peña law.
Introducing the secret ballot.
Right. Before this, voting was often public. Your boss could literally watch you vote.
Talk about intimidation.
Removing that intimidation was explosive. Between 1918 and 1931, the voting population skyrocketed.
By 133.5%, the electorate doubled overnight.
And it fundamentally shifted the power. The Radical Party, representing the middle class and workers, won the presidency in 1916.
The masses suddenly realized they were the masters of the country.
But this new flood of political energy was heading straight for an iron wall.
The Senate.
Yes, the conservative elites still controlled the Senate.
But wait, isn't that friction a good thing? Expanding democracy is usually the goal.
It is the goal, and it was a golden era for a brief moment.
Politicians were actually being held accountable. The courts were doing their jobs.
The period from 1914 to 1930 was their institutional Camelot.
But the boiling frog crisis was already turning up the heat.
Exactly. We know it worked because roll call votes peaked dramatically, over 60 roll calls in just 4 years.
Which means representatives were being monitored by constituents they couldn't hide.
And the Supreme Court showed real teeth. They struck down an emergency urban rent control law in 1922.
Going directly against the president and Congress to protect property rights.
They established themselves as the ultimate referee.
So they proved the system could work. They weren't doomed from the start.
But this golden age rested on the assumption that the global economy would keep booming.
And then the fatal black swan landed.
An economic crash on Wall Street became the excuse to execute a democracy thousands of miles away.
And the craziest part, the public cheered for the executioners.
The Great Depression caused commodity prices to violently crash. The economic engine seized up.
Panic sets in.
By 1930, the military launched a coup to overthrow the aging radical president.
Bypassing the ballot box with guns.
And they restored the conservatives to power.
But the public supported this. I can't wrap my head around that.
The anti-common sense reality is that people were in so much economic pain they wanted the bleeding to stop.
So they actively supported tearing up their own constitution for a quick fix.
Emergency times justified emergency unconstitutional powers in their minds.
But military coups are illegal. Who is supposed to stop them?
The ultimate guardians of the law.
Let's see what the Supreme Court did. They watched the Constitution get thrown in the shredder, and they applauded.
This is the darkest moment. Instead of checking the coup, the Supreme Court officially approved it.
They labeled it a triumphant revolution.
Yes. Only one single justice had the courage to resign.
The highest legal minds in the country gave a military junta a stamp of approval.
The psychological impact was devastating. The court flatteringly surrendered just to survive.
It's like the referee putting on the jersey of the team that's cheating, just so he doesn't get kicked off the field.
Exactly. By doing this, they completely shattered the public's fragile belief in the rule of law.
They planted the seeds for their own destruction.
With the referees on their side, the conservatives made a deal with the devil.
The elites thought cheating was a necessary evil. They didn't realize they were signing their own death warrant.
In 1931, the military thought they could win a clean election in Buenos Aires.
And they lost to the radicals.
So they simply annulled the results. They legally erased the election.
That is insane.
Yeah.
You win the game, and they just say it didn't count.
Then they boycotted the radicals from running in 1932, guaranteeing a conservative win.
The fatal logic here is staggering.
The conservatives truly believed they had to stay in power to manage the Depression.
They won the battle, but guaranteed they would lose the war. It's the ultimate hubris.
By using fraud, they permanently branded themselves as illegitimate.
Annulling one election is a crime of passion. What they did next was systematic murder of the vote.
When the players write the rulebook, democracy becomes a ghost.
Industrialized fraud. How does that even work?
By 1935, police literally kicked socialist and radical monitors out of polling stations.
Physical intimidation. Just kicking out the witnesses.
But they also used the law. Conservatives passed the law of fraud in 1933.
Rigging the internal mechanics.
Right. Nullifying a fraudulent election now required a 4/5 supermajority from the Electoral Board.
Wait, 4 out of 5 members had to agree to stop the cheating.
Yes. And 3 out of 5 actually voted to nullify the 1935 election due to blatant fraud.
A Democratic majority knew it was rigged.
But because of the new 4/5 rule, the fraud stood. The system legally protected illegal acts.
So they literally made it mathematically impossible to stop them from cheating.
The opposition tried one last desperate move in Parliament.
Imagine catching a bank robber red-handed, but he just walks out of the courtroom, so the judge says, well, I guess he's innocent.
In 1936, the radicals had overwhelming evidence of fraud.
They brought it to the Chamber of Deputies.
And to prevent the vote, the conservative coalition literally walked out of the building.
Triggering a deliberate collapse of the quorum.
Exactly. Without a quorum, no vote could be held. Parliament was paralyzed.
They literally took their ball and went home. And the president just let it happen.
The president let it happen, and the conservative Senate illegally declared the fraudulent election valid.
The public watched the government break its own rules in broad daylight.
It pushed the citizens into absolute despair regarding the rule of law.
And where was this cheating happening? The richer the neighborhood, the dirtier the politics.
Between 1934 and 1942, the Pampas region accounted for 55% of all reported fraud.
The province of Buenos Aires alone accounted for 28%.
The Pampas was the economic engine. The conservative landowners refused to lose control of their wealth.
But wait, wasn't Buenos Aires also the most populated? Doesn't more people just mean more reports?
You'd think so, but the historical record proves the fraud was deployed strategically.
To suppress the vote exactly where it mattered most for national control.
Exactly. They weaponized geography.
But steal a man's vote enough times, and he will look for a monster to fight his battles. Enter the strongman.
When the elites steal your ballot, you ask for a sledgehammer to smash the elites.
1943. Another military coup hits, ending the decade of fraud.
And a nationalist officer named Juan Perón rises rapidly.
He steps right into the massive political vacuum.
He becomes head of the Secretary of Labor, then vice president, and he passes massive pro-worker regulations.
Winning the fierce loyalty of the unions.
The public was so disgusted by the corrupt democracy of the 30s, they gladly embraced a populist who ignored the rules.
Perón didn't care about the Constitution. He cared about delivering results.
This is the ultimate blowback.
The elites created the exact conditions that birthed their worst nightmare.
Perón's new laws were incredibly popular, but entirely illegal.
So the Supreme Court finally decides to do its job, and the public hated them for it.
In 1945, Perón created special labor courts for workers,
just bypassing the independent judiciary entirely.
The Supreme Court correctly ruled that creating these courts by decree was unconstitutional.
The referee blows the whistle.
But the unions instantly retaliated. They claimed the court was just a puppet of the old oligarchy.
This is the dilemma. Because the court didn't defend the rules when the rich broke them, the poor refused to let the court defend the rules when Perón broke them.
It's a bitter irony. The court was legally right, but they had zero moral authority left.
To the people, the Constitution was just a tool the rich use to oppress the poor.
This massive polarization set the stage for 1946.
The data doesn't lie. Juan Perón wasn't just elected because of his charm. He was elected as an act of pure mathematical revenge.
The study ran a logistic regression model on the 1946 election results across counties,
filtering out the noise to find the real driver.
Right. And the single strongest predictor of a vote for Perón was how much fraud occurred in that specific county during the 1938 elections.
Oh, wow. So the voters whose ballots were stolen by conservatives in 38 were the exact same people who voted for Perón in 46.
It was a massive retaliation dance. They had lost all faith in checks and balances.
So let's unpack this. The elites literally engineered their own defeat by disenfranchising the very people who would eventually vote them out.
They meticulously dug their own political grave.
But what if they hadn't cheated? We can actually use math to rewrite history.
And the math says honest politicians would have prevented the rise of populism.
Perón won with about 54% of the vote.
The model calculated a counterfactual. What if the variable for 1930s fraud was set to 0?
Without the resentment of a stolen vote, what happens?
The probability of voting for Perón drops to just 40%.
He loses the election. That is insane.
If the conservatives had simply taken their losses and allowed honest elections, Peronism would likely never have taken national power.
A few stolen local elections in the 30s literally altered the destiny of a nation for a century.
It is an incredible butterfly effect.
And if you don't believe the math, just look at the one place that actually tried it in real life.
The Tale of Two Cities.
There was one single province that refused to cheat, and it became the only place the populist monster couldn't conquer.
The province of Cordoba, heavily populated by conservative elites, but morally opposed to electoral fraud.
So they ran clean elections in the 30s and lost to the radicals. They accepted defeat.
Right. And when the 1946 presidential election happened, Perón lost in Cordoba to the radicals by a 10% margin.
So the people in Cordoba didn't feel the need to vote for a strong man because they still trusted the ballot box.
Cordoba proves the thesis. The strongest defense against a populist dismantling of institutions is unshakable adherence to honest elections.
But Perón won the national election, and his first target was the last remaining break on his power.
How do you legally destroy a Supreme Court? You use their own cowardly past against them.
Immediately after taking office, Perón's allies moved to impeach the court.
Led by Congressman Rodolfo Decker, they impeached and removed 4 of the 5 sitting justices.
A total decapitation of the judicial branch. But how do they justify it?
They explicitly impeached the judges on the grounds that the court had legitimized the 1930 coup and silently tolerated a decade of conservative fraud.
Wow, it's a perfect trap. The Peronists used the conservatives' own sins to justify tearing down the final pillar of checks and balances.
The court couldn't even defend itself, because everyone knew they had been hypocrites.
The purge worked, but it broke the concept of justice in Argentina forever.
The highest court in the land went from a lifetime appointment to a revolving door.
It literally became a political locker room. Let's look at the political aftershocks.
From 1863 to 1945, there were only 38 changes to the Supreme Court, almost all due to death or retirement.
A stable institution. Average tenure of 10 years.
But from 1946 to 1998, 58 changes, only 5 due to death or retirement.
Most were forced resignations or impeachments.
Average tenure plummeted to 6 years, with new judges appointed almost every 11 months.
A new judge every 11 months. So whoever holds the presidency just treats the Supreme Court like their own personal legal team.
Judicial tenure became perfectly collinear with the durability of the ruling regime.
Judicial independence was dead. And when there is no independent referee, what happens to the money?
You trade away your laws for a quick fix, and your reward is an endless, agonizing economic nightmare.
Economic collapse.
Without a Supreme Court to check executive power, economic policy became wildly unstable. Property rights could be rewritten overnight.
So foreign direct investment just vanishes.
Completely. Between 1986 and 1990, inflation hit an apocalyptic 583.8%.
That destroys the middle class. It evaporates financial confidence.
The public trust in banks, measured by the M3 to GDP ratio, crashed from 0.60 to just 0.12.
The rational speculation of the 30s resulted in 70 years of economic darkness.
High deficits, hyperinflation, constant defaults became the new normal.
They traded short-term political survival for a century of poverty. It's the worst deal in history.
It is a devastating, entirely self-inflicted wound.
Which brings us to the ultimate question.
Argentina had a choice in 1930. They could endure the pain while maintaining the rule of law, or they could cheat to force a quick fix.
They chose to cheat.
They destroyed the public's belief in the system, and they have never truly gotten it back.
It makes you look at our world today differently, doesn't it? When we face a crisis, a pandemic, political polarization, economic crashes, there's always a temptation to bypass the rules, to say, just this once, the ends justify the means. But as Argentina shows us, once you dismantle that invisible barrier of trust, you might spend the next century trying to put it back together. So, what future straws are we casually breaking today to survive until tomorrow? Thank you for joining this deep dive. Goodbye.